Hello, I'm Carol.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and welcome to the Grief Gurus, a place for honest conversations about grief, coping, and living with loss.
We believe grief is part of your story, but it's not the whole story. Today, we're going to be chatting about why it's so hard to ask for help in grief. Lisa, I've got to ask you, did you reach out for help in those early days?
Gosh, I thought I did,
Mm,
but probably not. Certainly not to the degree that I could have.
yeah,
And I think this is something that's kind of macro and micro, where on a bigger scale, there's kind of official help that we get, whether it's therapy, counseling, maybe group support, or joining a community like the one that we've built at the Grief Gurus.
hmm,
But I think there's also a different aspect to it, which is just helping with, the day to day things. Can I, um, ask someone to bring my groceries in for me? Or is there someone that could just come and keep me company, or maybe run my laundry and those kinds of things that
yeah,
seem so difficult when we're in fresh grief? So I definitely didn't ask for the help that was around me. But part of it, and I think this is one of the barriers to asking for help, is we just don't have any idea what we even need. I don't
yeah,
know. Was that your experience?
yeah, yeah. I certainly didn't ask for help. I think that's a very common thing amongst women, isn't it? We tend to try and do it all. We're used to coping. And all of a sudden grief hits you and you can barely get out of bed, never mind think. And as you say, you don't even know really what it is that you need doing. And I can remember sitting there, it was very hot, it was June, just after Brian died, and I heard people cutting my grass, and I thought, that's weird. I looked out and there was this whole service cutting my grass. Turns out one of my old patients had paid for my grass to be cut for the whole summer. And I got to say
Amazing.
it was an incredible gift and so helpful because it was hot, I was tired, I didn't know how I would do it, and it was just an incredible gift for me. It was practical. And I think you're so right. We don't even realize the practical stuff. Asking a friend, if you're going to the shops, could you pick up some milk or eggs for me? We just don't do it. And, almost helpful, I think, is to have a list of things, laundry, groceries, whatever, vacuuming. And then when a friend says, what can I do to help? Just say, pick one of these or tick what it
Yes.
is that you need doing, because you just don't really know. And I think I don't know, I'm not sure I would have asked anybody to do my laundry or
Probably not.
change the bed for me. I probably wouldn't, but maybe groceries, or if you have young children, you can ask somebody to share the school run,
Definitely.
soccer, all of those things. And I think it's right. It's on these day-to-day levels we don't ask, but then we get to this point where we maybe need more emotional support rather than the practical support. And do we reach out then? Did you? How long did it take you before you reached out for help?
I don't actually remember. And just as a reminder, my daughter died in 97. So it's been almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Seems like yesterday. I'm sure others can relate. But yeah, I did get, though, with a grief counselor fairly quickly, probably because the people around me um, made that possible and
Yeah.
enforced, helping me get that help. But
Yeah.
even I'm just thinking, Carol, like further out from, the first year we know is like, got to get through the
Mhm.
first birthday, the
Mhm.
first holiday, the first anniversary, whatever those things look like. For me, the first Mother's Day felt like it was hell, and I knew that it was
I
coming,
can.
kind of thing. But when we get out, into the many months afterwards, and of course, because there's no timeline for grief,
Mhm.
we can't exactly say when this is, but at some point, we engage in some kind of work, if that's part of our life, or maybe we go back to whatever our routine was. Perhaps we were a volunteer, or a mom, or whatever that looked like. When we do go back to that, I think that can be the harder time to actually get the professional help. And by professional, I don't mean it has to be a grief counselor or a grief community necessarily, But what I do mean is that finding someone whose sole responsibility and intention is to support us when we're moving through these different phases of our healing. And the
Hmm.
reason, I mean, it could be a clergy person, it could be, friend is a little different because friends, we give and take. And I guess what I'm suggesting is, as we move away from the confusion and the beginning of what I've heard you call acute grief period, when we're moving back into the mainstream, having someone whose sole intention and goal is to be present to us, and wherever we can access that particular help, I think it's so important. But this is the kind of help that I think is so lacking when people are working to heal and to try to move forward and integrate
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
grief. I think that's a hard time, because we get busy and then we think, oh, we're good, we're fine, I'm good. I'm glad that the grief gurus is there, but I
Yeah.
don't really need it. I'm
Yeah.
managing okay. But what's the danger in that, Carol, if we just keep calm and carry on, as we've said before?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was me exactly. I thought, no, I'm good now. I had a couple of sessions with a grief counselor. I didn't particularly enjoy it, to be honest. I found her very quiet. Didn't it wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
And I went back to work. And as you say, you get busy and you're like, yep, I'm going to push these emotions down so I get through the day. And I think that's the danger, is that if we don't have someone that we can express to or talk to, we tend to push them down, and that leads to problems further down the road. So for me, I didn't seek help, professional help, until about 3 years. And by that time, I had burnt out. I had to leave work. And
Three
so we
years,
have,
Carol? That's
I
incredible
know,
that you
I know.
survived that long,
So,
having
well,
lost
yeah,
your
because you're
husband.
pushing, you're
Yeah.
pushing it down, right? You're just like, I need to get back to work. I need to keep going, and just, I'll be fine. I've read books, and of course, I'd read books, and I thought I knew and I understood. I think that's what many of us think, is that I'll be fine, because
Mhm.
everybody eventually, most people, are fine, and so we think we'll cope. But the beauty of having someone or somewhere where you can go and just say, you know what, it's been a terrible day. I'm just really struggling. We experienced that in the Grief Gurus this week. Somebody posted and said, this is a really difficult day. And we were both hopping in and having that supportive conversation with this person to help her and normalize it and just be there. Sometimes you just need someone to be there for you, because we are
Exactly.
so often there for everybody else, aren't we? And, just to let it out so that you're not pushing it down, I think is really, really important. And we don't feel comfortable being vulnerable necessarily with our family or friends, and they may not be able to take it. That's the other thing. And at 3 years down the road, most people would have said, aren't you back to normal yet? And of course, when you've been in, I know that your experience was many years down the road when everything came to the surface, like many years.
Yeah,
And
like
so
over
if,
2 decades is when I
right,
finally was
finally
like,
let
wait a
it
minute.
go and
Why do
acknowledge,
I feel like a zombie all this time? I have no idea. And
because the energy it takes to push down. So for people listening
yes,
to, it doesn't matter if it was 6 months ago or 20 years ago or anywhere in between that. If you have not dealt with your grief, if you haven't had a place or support, then you probably need to. Because, we know that unresolved grief causes mental health issues, it can cause insomnia and migraines and all sorts of things. We don't need to add to that. So, finding a place where you feel comfortable, where you feel safe, I think that's very important, isn't it? Safety, non judgmental, and people who can listen and understand. So important, wherever that may be.
and here we are saying, over 20 years ago,
Hmm.
or over 3 years ago, before really getting the help. And for our listeners, I think I would just, want to stress this point that you've got two folks here who suffered some pretty profound losses, and we're both saying, there is a cost to not getting that help. And just to encourage you, if you did the very difficult step of reaching out and trying to get help, if you hook up with a therapist or a counselor or join a community or whatever it might be, if it doesn't suit you, it doesn't mean that that
Mm,
experience was representative of all of what's available. It just means that it's not a good fit. So
yeah.
could be 2 or 3 times you try something out. If that's not working for you, don't stop there. Certainly don't keep doing something that you don't feel is going to yield any, support or benefit for you. That's silly. But at the same time, you don't want to give up on the idea that you can show up and talk about it exactly the way that it is. I had this experience myself just recently where I was having so much frustration with my own home situation, which is I have a special needs, almost 27-year-old. And I had been out of therapy for quite a while. And I was really struggling with some things around our son who lives at home and is tube fed. He's very involved. And I could hear my own voice in the Grief Gurus that we tell folks who are community members, which is, you need that place to go where someone could just listen to you. And after 2 sessions back with the therapist, it's like we forget how important it is to just show up as ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we're talking with friends or family about grief, we're not going to be honest. We're going to sugarcoat things, or we're going to create it in such a way that doesn't feel like it's too much, or that we're threatened, that it's threatening or whatever it is. We need to be able to show up with this thing so that we can, work through it, integrate it, etc.
I think we're also a little embarrassed if after some time we aren't doing as well as we're supposed to be, right? People expect you to be coming back to normal, back to work within the first week, all of this stuff. And so if you're not doing well and if you are struggling, it's almost like you think, well, I'm embarrassed to reach out. I should be doing better. And I would say no, timelines are different. Please reach out to wherever. And really, really important what you just said, Lisa, about finding the right fit. We all know that. Whether it's a hairdresser, right? You go to many hairdressers until you find the one and you stay with them because you love them. It's the same. You have to feel comfortable, you have to feel safe, you have to feel listened to. So please don't feel ashamed. It's not weak to reach out, it's actually courageous to reach out. Get the support. It may not be very much that you need, but just have a place where you can sit and be heard and have your grief witnessed.
Absolutely. That sums it up beautifully, Carol. And as we close here, if you enjoyed our chat, we hope you'll go ahead and like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to our podcast, The Grief Gurus. And we look forward to seeing you in the next chat.